In the book of Esther, chapter number 4, and you will look at the first 3 verses, then Esther chapter number 4. It says, when Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud voice and a bitter cry, and came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, whatsoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was a great mourning among the Jews, and fasting, and weeping, and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. Right, so this was after the decree came to kill all the Jews. Right, when they got that news, they decided that they would go into sackcloth and ashes. Right, again, you see this and fasting. So again, a lot of the times you see, as I said, you see this word fasting, you see sackcloth mentioned, and sometimes as well you see ashes mentioned as well. In the book of Psalms, however, in the book of Psalms, let's look at a couple of verses there. Psalms chapter 35 and verse number 3. Psalms chapter 35 and verse number 3. That should really be Psalms chapter 35 and verse number 13, right? Instead of 3, it should be verse number 13, right? Psalms 35 and verse number 13. It says, but as for me, when they were sick, he says, my clothing was sackcloth. He says, I humbled my soul with fasting, and my prayer returned into mine own bosom. Right? So you see this term humbling his soul, and he says with fasting. Right? So that's how he humbled his soul, fasting. Right? The book of Psalms 69 and verse number 10. Again, David, Psalms chapter 69 and verse number 10. Psalm 69, verse number 10. It says, when I wept and chastened my soul with fasting, he says, that was to my reproach. Notice in verse 11, he says, I made sackcloth also my garment, and I became a proverb to them. So as I said, a lot of times when you see this word fasting, you'll also see mentioned sackcloth as well, which is a garment that they would have worn. In the book of Psalms 109 and verse number 24. Psalms chapter 109 and verse number 24. It says, my knees are weak through fasting. He says, and my flesh feel it of fatness. So in this book of Psalms, David talks about humbling his soul with fasting, chastening his soul, he says, with fasting. And then he says his knees being weak, he says, through fasting. So even though there was only one day a year that there was to be a day of fasting by the commandment of the Lord, the Jews often fasted as a form of spiritual discipline.